So turn in your Bibles to the book of Ruth, chapter 3. By way of recap, this is one of the great literary stories in the Bible. It's a beautiful love story, but there's way more going on here than meets the eye. It's not fairy tale, it's facts. They are real characters, there's real drama, there's real outcomes being orchestrated by God to accomplish a greater purpose. And the question begs, as we finish the book of Ruth, a question we asked in the beginning: why in the world is the book of Ruth in the Bible? Why would God include this book? Well, because he's a God who loves to show off his glory. He loves to showcase how he knew what was happening in the beginning and in the end. He's the Alpha, he's the Omega. He's the God who begins, he's the God who finishes. And we're the people in between sometimes saying, what are you doing? Where are you? How is this all going to play out? Are you seeing this right now? Whether that's your obedience and you think, God, where's my blessing? I'm doing all the right things. Or you're going through trial and challenges and you're thinking, this isn't going how I thought it would go. Lord, where are you? What are you doing? He is the God who shows off his wisdom and puts on display his plan through ordinary people and everyday decisions. He is the God who showcases his sovereignty when you think, well, that just happened by accident, or, fate brought this or that together. Oh no, God was at work, his sovereignty on display. The book of Ruth is a story in which we find hope, perspective, and the theme of redemption. And the idea that God, in his providence, is working out all these details, every detail, that he's intimately acquainted with the details in the lives of these characters, but specifically your life and my life. That person you met, the seemingly random events, the mundane obedience that you may wonder about if God is going to honor, he sees it, he's involved. Maybe you don't think it matters much, but it all works together for his purposes when you love him and you're called according to his purposes. And that's what we're going to see today, the culmination of the book of Ruth. Let's pick it up in chapter 3, verse 1. I've laid this out in 3 different headers. You can write these in if you'd like, and then we'll do 3 applications to finish. First and foremost, in this particular section, we have the unorthodox plan. The unorthodox plan. Verse 1, then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, my daughter, shall I not seek security for you that it may be well with you? Now I need to stop you there and let me just give you the 60-second rundown so you get up to speed. You remember those old shows, you'd watch them week over week, and every week there'd be the recap. Here's what happened last time on this episode of whatever. And you'd get caught up if you were new to the show. Let me give you the catch-up notes here. There is a character named Naomi, and she was married to a man named Elimelech. Elimelech had 2 sons. Him and Naomi and their 2 sons were in Bethlehem. They are God's people. There was a famine, so they moved to Moab. They get to Moab, and they stay there for a bit, but Elimelech dies. So now Naomi the widow and her 2 sons are there. Now, the 2 sons meet 2 women, Moabite women, and they marry them. So now you've got Naomi the widow, you've got these 2 sons, and you've got Orpah, wife number 1, Ruth, wife number 2. Well, both the sons die. So now we've got widow times 3. It's Naomi, it's Orpah, and it's Ruth. Naomi, in modern vernacular, to paraphrase, says, forget this, I'm out of here. I'm going back to Bethlehem. Ironically enough, Bethlehem means house of bread. There was no bread, but they're going to go back because they hear that there's food there. So now there's bread in the house of bread once again. She says, I'm going back. Now you 2 daughter-in-laws, God bless you, leave me. I can't take 2 of you home with me. Go back to your people, go back to your gods, meet some nice young men. You still have a shot. Meet a man, have some children, have a life. I'll be, the photo on the mantle, and you go on. I'm a destitute widow. You don't want to come with me. It's not going to go well the way I'm going. Orpah says, I like that plan. I'm going to go back home and find a man. She does. Ruth, though, does the unthinkable. She's stubborn. She's loyal. And she's faithful to her mother-in-law. She says, I'm not going anywhere. Okay? Table for 2. You and me. The widows are going back together, you're not going to unhitch me that easily. And doing that, she says, your land is going to be my land, your people are going to be my people, and your God, Yahweh, is going to be my God. There's this profession of faith. And back then, it wasn't like you and I decide, oh, I think I'll move to California. Well, nobody moves there. I think I'll move out of California and I'll come to Arizona. And it would be great if they said, your what used to be conservative Arizona politics will be my conservative Arizona politics, and your belief in God will be my belief in God. But no, they come here with everything else. But for Ruth, she says, no, I'm coming to do it your way. Your people, my people. Your God, my God. All of it. I'm selling out my people, everything. And what that would mean is you would come under an ethnic group. That group had a culture, had a belief system, everything. It wasn't like today, all mixed together. Well, here they are. They get back. Naomi's friends see her. They say, hey, it's Naomi. It's you. She said, don't call me that. Call me Mara. I've got a new nickname. It means bitter. The Lord has dealt very harshly with me. My sons are dead. My husband's dead. I tried to get rid of both daughter-in-laws. I have this one here. She's a Moabite, which makes Ruth a foreigner. Foreigners are not liked. They're like the immigrant refugee that's sort of like, you're really in the way here. That's the position they're in. It's a time where it's not good to be a woman or a woman alone. So they're vulnerable. They're vulnerable to the sex slave trade, to rape, to abuse, to assault, to mistreatment as workers, all of that. So they have no protection. So now you have two widows on their own with no provision and no protection, but they're coming back to Bethlehem. And then they meet Boaz. It happens to be that she meets him in his field, which of course we know is God working in the details, although Ruth doesn't know how the love story is going to end. She didn't plan to go there with some great idea. She didn't stay loyal to Naomi because Naomi said, hey, I've got money and I've got some great men back in Bethlehem. They would love to marry you. There was no promise. Ruth just had faith and left it all. Naomi and her find themselves there. They meet Boaz. He begins to take care of them. So now they at least have food. And as we begin to see the story unfold, we realize that God is doing something remarkable. And Naomi starts to see it as well. And so that's where we come in chapter 3. Naomi, her mother-in-law, says, my daughter, shall I not seek security for you that it may be well with you? That phrase, seek security, literally translates, if you want to write this down or circle it, just means find rest. She's saying, I want to find rest for you, my daughter-in-law. There will be no rest, no protection, no provision until you find someone. I need to find you a husband. She wants her widowed daughter-in-law, who's been loyal and caring and hardworking, to have long-term security. And without a husband, there wouldn't be one. And again, you've really got to continue to cross the time bridge in your mind here and get original authorial intent and that culture etched in your modern 2023 mind. This is not at all like our world today, where women are told, ain't no man going to hold you down, and don't you depend on no man, and all this stuff, and the feminism and all of those things. This is a culture in which having a husband was a glory to a woman. He was a provider. He was a protector. It was old school. It was a time when you were left vulnerable. And even still today, that is the value, and that is the beauty of God's design, is that he brings men and women together, and men are supposed to be godly, Christ-exalting, Christ-reflecting protectors, providers, and partners in life, and women should feel a sense of security and love. Naomi wants that for her daughter. Now, is not Boaz our kinsman, she says, with whose maids you were? Behold, he winnows barley at the threshing floor tonight. All right. So we see Naomi now for what she is, and we need to be honest. She's up to something. She knows his schedule. She mentions he's a kinsman. I'm going to explain that here shortly. But then look at verse 3. Come on. Wash yourself, therefore. Anoint yourself. Put on your best clothes. Go down to the threshing floor. But don't make yourself known to the man until he's finished eating and drinking. So let him have a good meal. And then here's what we're going to do. So clearly this is a very interesting, most certainly unorthodox plan. We've got washing what is likely some perfume, glistening moisturizers in today's vernacular. She's anointing herself. She's going to smell nice and then put on her best clothes. Now, for poor Ruth, her best clothes aren't exactly, Versace. This is going to be better, though, than her day-to-day work outfit. And why would she wash herself? Because all Boaz has known her as is this hardworking, kind of dirt on the face. This ain't no French manicured nails gal. She's been out in the field. So he says, take a bath, wash up, glisten, like the moisturizer commercials today, and look good, and smell nice. And then go to the threshing floor where he's going to be and wait until he's at a nice meal. Naomi is making moves. And it's an unorthodox move at that. It's also a moment where we begin to see verbiage that is important not to miss. That word kinsman. Kinsman redeemer is the full phrase. This is the concept. A kinsman redeemer was a relative who could redeem someone who was in a position of slavery or in debt or, in their case, dire need. And that relative could buy back, redeem that individual, and unlock for them, once again, their land, their inheritance, and even their lineage. So when she says Boaz is our kinsman, what she's proposing is a type of proposal. That custom would have been known and understood at the time. That Boaz is the one who can redeem you. And if a relative, again, would die, the next closest relative could redeem all of it. The property, in this case, also the widow. You'd take on the widow. And if you had a son, here's what's wild. That son would technically be the lineage of the dead relative you've stepped in for. So this is a way to carry on in God's Levitical law the lineage of those, our family members who have died. Another redeemer comes in and says, I will ensure the line is carried on. And that son would even inherit the land that used to belong to his deceased father. All of that loaded here. In this case, Elimelech, his lineage, his son, would live on through Ruth and Boaz if he would redeem her. And so here's the unorthodox plan as it unfolds. Verse 4, it shall be when he lies down, you will notice the place where he lies. You will go and uncover his feet and lie down. And then he will tell you what to do. She said to her, all that you say, I will do. So what you've just read is a great example of how the Bible can be descriptive, not always or necessarily prescriptive. This is like a Bible study tip for you. A lot of people read the Bible, and whatever it says, they're like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do. Well, hold on a minute, because now you'd be saying, well, okay, I guess we're going to tell our daughters, hey, there's a really nice guy. I want you to take a bath. It's a great idea, but now it goes off the rails. Put on some moisturizer and perfume, your best clothes, and then I want you to go to where he's sleeping, uncover his feet, and lay down. And then when he wakes up, say, what do you want to do? And then do it. That's not how it works in our society. That's not just out of touch. You're out of your mind. We don't do it that way. What's going on here? Well, in those days, this was customary. She is going to go make a proposal. There's a few things that are important to notice as well, and we need to unpack it further so that we really get the idea. So she went down to the threshing floor and did according to all that her mother-in-law had commanded. When Boaz had eaten and drunk and his heart was merry, let's pause right there. This doesn't mean he was drunk. It means he has eaten and he's drank and his heart was happy. This is a happy, full man. This is like, just picture your best steak dinner. Now your belly's full. You go, oh, I could go to bed right now. That's that moment. He's very happy. He goes to bed, lies down at the end of the heap of grain, and she came secretly. She uncovered his feet and lay down. It happened in the middle of the night that the man was startled and bent forward, and behold, a woman was lying at his feet. He said, who are you? She answered, I'm Ruth, your maid. So spread your covering over your maid, for you are a close relative. Now, want to assure you of a few things here. Number one, this is not a sexual advance, as some would think. Wow, this is quite an inappropriate gesture, and now we're into some of that pictorial, illustrative material where people will say, Rahab was a prostitute, and look how God used her. David was a murderer. Look how God used him. Ruth, man, she was, and you fill in the blank with whatever adjective describes a woman who shows up at night, uncovers the feet, and says, let's get in bed. She was that. Look at how God used them. This is not that. I want you to slow down and remember the character of these two individuals. We must be so careful with these truths. She is there and uncovers his feet. This will make him get cold. Some commentators do some weird stuff with this. Like feet represent this and represent that. No, you just tonight, I want you to do this. I want you to sleep barefoot. And I want you to turn your AC down to what it would have been like at the threshing floor that night. Give me about 58, maybe 54, maybe 48 if your thermostat will go that low. You know what, better yet, just go outside, okay? Cover yourself up real nice and warm at about 10:30 or 11 p.m. with a nice full meal. And then what I want you to do, tell your wife or your husband, or if you have one, have a friend or whoever, just uncover your feet and you tell me if in 2 to 5 minutes you don't wake up irate. Am I the only one who hates getting cold feet at night like that where they peek out and the AC's on, you're going, and you just wake up? Or better yet, here's this, there's a body at the foot of his bed. That'll do it. That's all it is. He wakes up, and it's dark. You say, it's dark. Why does he ask, who are you? Doesn't he realize? No, there's no iPhone flashlight, you modern Christian. There's no lamp. It's pitch black. Who are you? I'm Ruth. And then this phrase, which is so commonly misunderstood as an immoral advance by Ruth, it's not. She says, spread your covering over your maid. People think, she just said, pull the covers over us and let's be immoral. This is Ruth really making the pass. No, you must slow down. The phrase in those days is one that meant protection, provision, and care. Spread your covering over your maid was a request. Would you take me in? Would you provide for me, protect me? Would you redeem me? It's the language that the prophet Ezekiel would later on borrow and use to describe God redeeming and covering his people. Ezekiel 16, 8 to 10. When I passed by you again and saw you, this is Yahweh talking. Behold, you were at the age of love. And I spread the corner of my garment over you and covered your nakedness. This is the shame of God's sinful people rebelling against him. You could maybe think of even yourself in your nakedness and shame by way of sin spiritually, your guilt, the blood on your hands of sin and rebellion against God. What does he do? He makes a vow to you. He says, I make a vow to you. I enter into covenant with you, even though you are naked and ashamed, declares the Lord God, and you became mine. You begin to see the undertones of the gospel and of redemption coming clear. And verse 9 of Ezekiel 16, then I bathed you with water and washed off the blood from you and anointed you with oil. See the parallels there that would later come. I clothed you also with embroidered cloth and shod you with fine leather. Shod would be feet. These are good shoes. I wrapped you in fine linen and covered you with silk. The bigger picture is starting to emerge here. This is the picture of protection and care and of redemption, and out of love, a redeemer would do this. Out of character, not feelings, not some false motive, certainly not of sexual desire. This is because of true, genuine love. And so could it be that Boaz will redeem her? The entire story will have a happily ever after ending and turn. He said, may you be blessed of the Lord, my daughter. You have shown your last kindness to be better than the first. I want to stop there and then we'll pick it up. When he uses the term daughter, we begin to get the picture again of something that was clear earlier on. He calls her daughter a lot. This means Boaz was older. And so he's acknowledging her need. He's respectable. He's respecting her. And he says, you've shown your last kindness to be better than the first. Meaning, what you're doing right now is such an example of kindness and character. It's even better than when you came and you served in my field, and when you honored your mother-in-law, you didn't leave her. I heard all about you. You remember that from previous chapters. I heard the way you left your people. I heard the way you honored and came to worship my God. This is even better. You would come to me. Why does he say that? Look at it. By not going after young men, whether poor or rich. He's saying, Ruth, you could have had a younger buck. You could have had some strapping young man. You come to me. What have I done to deserve a woman like you? What have I done to deserve a young woman with a future that you would consider me? Now, my daughter, do not fear. I'll do for you whatever you ask. For all my people in the city know you are a woman of excellence. Ruth's character, once again, has gone before her. Boaz is impressed. She could have gone again for a younger buck, but character here on all fronts is what wins. And her character continues to shine as it has for 3 chapters, and his character as well. There was one of you blessed church members came to me last week, and it's an important question. You said, what do we do in this modern day age with the story of Ruth and Boaz? And how does it relate to kind of modern day grooming? You know, he's a very older man. She's a very young woman. And I said, well, those are great questions. Number one, this is going to be more normal in those times than now, where an older man would marry a younger adult woman. This is completely fine in that context. Number two, let's not be too quick to judge and start throwing the word grooming around, because it won't. Who grooms who? Wait until she shows up at his bed and uncovers his feet. Poor guy didn't ask for it. He's minding his business. So he's not an older man grooming this young woman. It's not inappropriate. It's not immoral. This is a beautiful picture of 2 people with character doing what was right in God's eyes in those days. And listen to how far Boaz even goes with his character. Verse 12, don't miss this. He doesn't just jump into it. He goes, sweet, I got not only a woman of excellence, I got this young, hardworking, loyal gal. No, he says, now it is true I'm a close relative. However, there's a relative closer than I. There's somebody else. Remain this night when morning comes. If he will redeem you, good. Let him redeem you. Meaning, look, as long as you're cared for, as long as you get what you need, I'm okay with that. But if he does not wish to redeem you, I will redeem you. And then he says, as the Lord lives. This is a vow. If he doesn't, I will. Don't fear. You're going to be cared for. Lie down until morning. Once again, he says, lay down, stay where you are. He responds favorably, including being honest about the potential hiccup to Naomi's plan, to Ruth's plan, and perhaps even to his idea that, wow, he's going to get an amazing wife. And then he encourages her to lie down for the night. Why does he do this? Again, is it inappropriate? No. What is he doing? He's actually protecting her once again, and his character is shining through again, because in those days, remember where we are and when we are. Judges 21, verse 25 is our background verse, where there was no king in Israel in those days, and everybody did whatever was right in his own eyes. There was rape, there was assault, there was sex slavery, there was murder. All of it. Why would you send a woman out from your threshing floor in the middle of the night to succumb to the elements or an attacker? You wouldn't. You'd say, now lie down and take a rest. You're safe. And in the morning, we'll settle it. So she lay at his feet until morning and rose before one could recognize another. And he said, let it not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. What's he doing? He's protecting her reputation. Saying, don't go in the middle of the day, even though we didn't do anything wrong. You don't need to get the Bethlehem town gossips going by leaving my threshing floor in the morning. And they go, we know what this little Moabite's up to. Oh, now the motive and the agenda become clear. No. Go when it's still dark, and let's settle this in the morning. Again, he said, give me the cloak that is on you and hold it. So she held it. He measures 6 measures of barley and laid it on her, and she went into the city. So again, still protective. Boaz ensures that not only is she going to be clear of the gossips in town, but she's going to be well provided for. He loads her up with barley again, so she doesn't go back empty-handed. And I want to pause there for a moment and reflect with you. The story overall is about redemption. One of the themes running through it like a vein is the providence of God. But can we not reflect on the character of these characters? You know, in the Bible, many times in the Old Testament, we can. Are they the point of the story? No. God's point is the point of the story. But when you look at their character, do you not see the need culturally today to emulate the way they were in their character? Again, were their customs applicable to today? No. Are we going to do everything they did in that sense? No. But the way they were as God-fearing people is worth emulating today. Ladies and young men, or those of you who get the joy of raising young men and young women, don't miss their character and how God blesses their obedience. You know, this is actually very boring obedience. Ruth is just doing the same thing every day, being loyal, worshiping God, following a harder path, working in the fields, and expecting really nothing from it. That's very boring and mundane. It's also the principle of delayed gratification. Not everything is instant. It's just going about your business the right way every day. You look at Boaz as a man. As a married man, I'm convicted by this. I look at the way he is, a protector, a provider, filled with integrity, hardworking, chivalrous, and kind. You know, the kindness of Boaz probably shines through the most, that he is a kind man. In today's world, more of us as men, not only married men, but men who will be married, and you have the desire to be married, look to a man like Boaz. Look at the way that he carries himself. Look at the way he works. In today's society, many times over, men are not being told, young men especially, that your habits that you're forming in college are going to go with you for a long time. I remember a college coach saying that to me one time. He was a Christian man, and I kind of just didn't think about it as deeply as I should have. And then I looked at the way my life unfolded, and I thought, wow, I should have taken that advice a lot earlier. And the Lord redeems, and His grace covers us, and the Holy Spirit is real, and He's sanctifying us. But there is this idea that the sooner you get it through your head, and we get it through our heads as men, that we were built to work and provide and protect and honor and do things that are difficult in order to care for people that are dependent on us, the sooner you will begin to embrace and live out what real biblical manhood is. Today, men don't want people depending on them because it's pressure. I don't want the pressure. I just want to play. No. Boaz stands as an example of a man who has employees who depend on him for their paycheck, a woman who will depend on him for her redemption of property and livelihood, a widow, another widow in Naomi, and many others in the town who are aware of his reputation. Boaz stands as an example to us of a man who has outstanding character. And if his character stings your heart with conviction, good. Let it do its work like a healing balm that we might become better and more biblical men. And let's not leave Ruth out here. She's no damsel in distress, you know, one of those Disney aloof kind of divas that's just, oh, I know nothing. Thankful for the prince. No. Ruth is an example of the kind of woman that a godly man should be praying for, and the kind of woman that every woman who calls herself a Christian would want to emulate. She works hard. She's been working hard. She's loyal. She's God-fearing. You know, she's stubborn in all the right ways. Day after day, doing what she ought to. And you know what I love about this story and what shows us that you want to marry a woman who has her head on straight and knows what to do with the resources that are provided. She's not some Kardashian just living it up and spending it wildly thinking that's life. You know, that's just the opposite version of, you know, the boy who grows up to be a man and thinks life's just about play. No, Ruth gets after it. And what I love about this story is this right here. Boaz could have walked all the barley home for her. Wouldn't that have been chivalrous? And here I will take these 6 measures of barley with my bulging forearms and my delts popping out of my cloak, and I'll walk up to your home and say, Naomi, here you are. No. He saddles her with what I would like to call the barley backpack. 6 measures. Now, I won't go down the rabbit hole of all the measuring systems because we've talked about that already when we had the ephah early on. But if 6 measures, which is ambiguous, represents 6 omers, we've got 18 to 30 pounds on this woman's back. If measure meant the seah, which is about 1/3 of an ephah, we've got 60 to 100 pounds. So now she's like a hunter carrying a bunch of elk meat out of a bush. Like that level, a hiker with a backpack that's big. Whichever one, Ruth is strong and hard working. Boaz is under no illusion as to what kind of woman she is. In that, ladies, there is an example to you. To be a woman whose hands are busy about the right things. A woman whose perspective is, what would Yahweh have me do in everyday situations? Men, a woman is not biblical and feminine if she does nothing. It's the Proverbs 31 industrious woman who is active. You don't want a deaf, mute doormat. You want a woman with godly guts. That's who Ruth is. She is strong. She is the antithesis to Taylor Swift and Beyonce's version of the independent woman. She is godly and strong, yet she is submissive under him, and she can carry wheat. This is a good woman. Let the Holy Spirit lead you to apply that statement however it is in your life. Whatever wheat you carry tomorrow. Character counts, doesn't it? Don't miss the fact that God does bless them and honor them in light of their character. When she came to her mother-in-law, "How did it go, my daughter?" And she told her all the man had done for her. I picture it like maybe a modern-day drama. She just turns around and shows Naomi the 30 pounds on her back. That's how it went. He sent me home with all of this. I'm not empty-handed. I just love the translation. I love the language used by the author. Empty-handed. Do you see the shadows of what was in the beginning when Naomi said, "I'm empty. I left full. I've come back with nothing. I'm bitter. I'm empty." And now we just begin to see the blessings of God pouring out on her life and the faithfulness coming to fruition. And then she says, "Wait, my daughter, until you know how the matter turns out, for the man will not rest until he has settled it today." I love that. Naomi knows Boaz is that guy. He's going to wake up in the morning and say, "To the gates. I want my woman." That's a man who's on it. It's a man who says, what God would have us do, we must do. And now we have the unexpected plot, because I don't think it's going to go as perfectly as they thought. Boaz went up to the gate and sat down there. And behold, the close relative of whom Boaz spoke was passing by, and so he said, "Turn aside, friend, sit down here." And he turned aside and sat down. He took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, "Sit down," and they sat down. So again, I love the way the author presents this. Boaz is clearly a man of character and authority. He's kind of someone. We make him out to be quite the man of valor. He sees the guy passing by and goes, "Hey, friend, we got to talk. Sit down." And the Bible just says, "and he sat down." So you picture, hey, sit down, okay. And then, hey, you 10, sit down. And they all sit down. Boaz is calling shots, and everybody's happy to do it. What's happening here is a business matter. The town gate is where business transactions were done. Now, we don't know why. We're not told why 10 men, okay? But later on, in Hebrew culture, 10 became the number for quorum in the synagogue when a major decision had to be made. So evidently, 10 is going to set the decision. Those are the witnesses or the jury. The elders would do that, and there's about to be a transaction. He says to the closest relative, Naomi, who has come back from the land of Moab, has to sell the piece of land which belonged to our brother Elimelech. So she's got to sell it to live. She's impoverished. So I thought to inform you, saying, buy it before those who are sitting here and before the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, redeem it. But if not, tell me that I may know, for there's no one but you to redeem it, and then I'm after you, and I will redeem it. So Boaz is saying, look, if you want this, it's yours. This closest relative, who in poetic justice is not named because, well, we'll see why in a minute, has first right of refusal. So he's going to take it. He said, I'll redeem it. I got it. I'll take it. It's mine. But Boaz is not just a man of character. He's not just hardworking. He's also quite the businessman, a little bit shrewd, and I might add he'd make a good lawyer as well. Verse 5, then Boaz said, on the day you buy the field from the hand of Naomi, you must also acquire Ruth. And he doesn't just say Ruth, the woman of excellence, Ruth, this wonderful young woman. Oh, no, he adds that she is the Moabite woman. A little dig to scare him off. One catch. You got to take the foreigner with you, is what he's saying. And you have to raise up the name of the deceased on his inheritance. See, now here's our kinsman redeemer theme again. Redeeming someone meant you bought their property. You would bring in the widow as well. It'd be real easy if there was no widow. You just get all the stuff. But you got to take the widow. And then if you have a son, the son you have with her inherits the land that you have redeemed. But not only that, that is still your son, and he gets a cut of some of your estate. It's good to be the second generation. And this guy is thinking, hold on a minute. I don't know if I like the catch. Elimelech died. You got to remember that. So Mahlon, who was Ruth's husband, was the rightful inheritor of the land they owned still back in Bethlehem. Well, Ruth is his widow. So this isn't just Elimelech's stuff. This is Mahlon's land, which is attached to Ruth the Moabite. This man begins to think twice, and the plot thickens. The closest relative said, I cannot redeem it for myself because I would jeopardize my own inheritance. Oh, now he's out. You don't want the Moabite. Redeem it for yourself. You may have my right of redemption. I cannot redeem it. Now, we don't know his reasons. It could be that he had the money to buy the field and whatever was attached to it, but he didn't have the money or the means to support a wife. I think that's unlikely because it's quite unlikely he would have the money to buy the land and then couldn't afford to just keep a woman alive on it. It is more likely that he didn't want a Moabite wife. Doesn't matter her character, doesn't matter what he heard about her. I don't want the foreigner. More than that, the people at that time were quite superstitious, and there would have been a lot of thoughts to Elimelech and his boys going to Moab, and all three of them dying. Was that God's judgment because they left Bethlehem? Well, I don't want to marry her. Maybe I'm going to end up like Mahlon, and somebody else is going to get all my stuff. I don't want to die. I don't want the drama. I don't want the problems. But most likely of all, out of that idea, I don't want to have a son with her and have to give up all the things I have bought and I have to him. I'm going to jeopardize my estate and my inheritance. He's really not mine. I'm the Redeemer who has to carry it on. I'm out. And Boaz seals the deal. Now, this was the custom in former times in Israel. concerning the redemption and exchange of land to confirm any matter, a man removed his sandal and gave it to another. And this was the manner of attestation in Israel. So the closest relative said to Boaz, buy it for yourself, and he removed his sandal. So picture this. I buy something from you, and to signify that it's a done deal, you give me your shoe. And I have your shoe, and you go home with one less shoe. Everybody in our town, in our village, looks and says, hey, you, no shoe. Did the deal? Yep. And I'm walking around with the shoe saying, I got it. I'm the new owner. Also the shoe being symbolic of I can now walk on this land. It's mine. All of that is clear. And Boaz says to the elders and all the people, you are witnesses today. I have bought from the hand of Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech and all that belonged to Chilion and Mahlon. Moreover, I have acquired Ruth the Moabitess, says it again, the author wants you to remember where she's from, the widow of Mahlon, to be my wife in order to raise up the name of the deceased on his inheritance, such a man of character that he's willing to do that, so that the name of the deceased will not be cut off from his brothers or from the court of his birthplace. You are witnesses today. All the people who were in the court and the elders said, we are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who's coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, both of whom built the house of Israel. What a blessing that they're speaking over her. May you achieve the wealth in Ephrathah and become famous in Bethlehem. Moreover, may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah through the offspring which the Lord will give you by this young woman. I mean, everybody knew and understood that she's young enough to have children still. And Boaz's lineage is going to get supercharged, and his home is going to be blessed and full. And they pray over her the same storyline of a Rachel and a Leah. And if you remember, Rachel was barren, then Leah had babies, and God did redeem, but in this, Ruth has not had children up to this point, like Rachel, and yet will like Leah. May she be as both, blessed of God, building up the house of Israel. You've got to still think of when Naomi said, call me Mara. I'm empty. Oh, the house of Boaz and the lineage of Elimelech and Naomi is going to be full. God is working. And so Boaz took Ruth, she became his wife, and he went into her, and the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. And the women said to Naomi, blessed is the Lord who has not left you without a redeemer today. May his name become famous in Israel. May he also be to you a restorer of life and a sustainer of your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you and is better to you than 7 sons has given birth to him. Then Naomi took the child, laid him in her lap, and became his nurse. What a happily ever after ending, but you cannot miss. Finally, number 3, where we land the plane, the unveiled purpose. You don't just have this unorthodox plan and this unexpected plot. You've got the unveiled purpose. What was God doing in all of these things? The neighbor women gave him a name, saying, a son has been born to Naomi, so they named him Obed. In her return, Naomi tells them, call me Mara, for I am bitter and empty. Now, it is they who call her son by name, Obed. And the lineage of Naomi, by really lineage of being her grandchild, extends. And it's not just any lineage. Look at it there. The author includes it for you. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. It's right there for you to see. Then he restarts it a little further back into the blessing of Perez, which was just mentioned by their prayer and them saying, may it be as it was for him. Now these are the generations of Perez. To Perez was born Hezron, and to Hezron was born Ram, and to Ram Amminadab, and to Amminadab was born Nahshon, and to Nahshon Salmon, and to Salmon was born Boaz, and to Boaz Obed, and to Obed was born Jesse, and to Jesse David. The author could have just ended the story with, and they lived happily ever after, but he does what you and I love at the end of movies. You know those documentaries where they leave you with everything tied off, But there's some details you really want filled in, and you're waiting for the credits to pop up. And I'm not talking about the name of the executive producer. No, not that credit. You want to see the little paragraph. It was after that in history. So-and-so went on to, and if you don't get that, what do? You grab your phone and you start looking up on Wikipedia what really happened, what was true, what wasn't. You want the real story. The author does that. This is the original closing credit of the facts. He's saying, do you see it now? The juicy details, the truth behind the truths, that this was the lineage of King David, which is exactly where the Messiah would come from. This was no ordinary story, even though they were ordinary people. There's something greater happening here. This is the one whom Isaiah would eventually prophesy about. He'd be born in the city of David, Bethlehem. The house of bread, which had none, would now make way for the very bread of life. The Moabite Ruth, who has no inheritance, she's an outsider, she's a foreigner, paves the way for outsiders like you and I, who have no inheritance, to now be called sons and daughters of God, to receive an inheritance through Christ. Naomi, who was an empty and bitter widow, is now full of hope as she stares into little Obed's eyes. Heartache gives way to hope. Bitterness has been replaced by blessing. Pain is now overshadowed by God's providence, and redemption has come. This is a picture of Christ. You are the one who is lost. You are the one who is a foreigner. You are the one destitute and in dire need. And he has come and said, I will redeem. There are 3 closing applications to the entire book. Let me give them to you, and then we will pray. Number 1, you must know God is sovereign over every detail of your life. There are no accidents with him. Nothing is by chance or happenstance. Maybe you love it, maybe you don't, but in all of it, God is working. He is sovereign. He's never out of control. In this story, death, famine, the timing of the harvest, Ruth's stubborn loyalty, even the way that God made her personality, she was supposed to be that way. Naomi's crazy idea to lay at his feet, no one being on the threshing floor, Boaz responding kindly, the closer relative chickening out at the gate. It being Bethlehem, them becoming the grandparents of King David. Come on. The lineage of the Messiah. You cannot imagine God as a far-off, distant deity. And here's also what I want you to take away from this is he will use simple faith and the simple obedience of your life, the things that you don't even see yet, to change generations to come. You say, how? Well, look at this. Ruth and Boaz are just going about their faithful business. And God will use their lives and their decisions to change generations to come. Sometimes, and maybe many times, your obedience isn't really about you. First and foremost, it's about love for Christ. But second, your life of faithfulness may be, and likely is, planting seeds in the ground that will grow trees to provide shade for a coming generation, your children's children's children, because of your obedience and your faithfulness. Now you and I start thinking of these things not in terms of ourselves. What do I get from God? But Lord, use my life to write whatever story you are, not only for while I am on this ball of dirt, but when the generations come after me, may it be that my life was used for whatever your sovereign purposes had ordained. Number 2, God may allow what he hates to accomplish what he loves. This is my favorite Johnny Erickson Tada quote. Our beloved sister who's a quadriplegic, and the Lord has used her more mightily than 1,000 able-bodied men. Look, in your life there's going to be trials. There's going to be hardships. There's going to be times of loss and tragedy. I will be empty, as Naomi was. The story of Ruth reminds us God is working in the wilderness. He allows what he hates to accomplish what he loves. Does he love the wilderness? No. Is he a sadistic, ascetic, abusive cosmic father who says, yeah, I just love to beat on him and give it to him. That'll really show him that they're just a worm in the dirt, lucky to ever be in heaven. No, he's a loving, personal, gracious, merciful, caring. He is slow to anger. He is your best, true, only eternal Father. And he will allow things at times in order to accomplish his greater purpose. That he loves you and has called you does not mean you will be exempt from pain and from the wilderness and from trial, but he always takes the pain and he uses it for his purposes. Finally, number 3, God is in the business of redemption. The definition of redemption is to buy something back. And this is what really the story of Ruth comes down to. Ruth, Naomi, and even the lineage of Elimelech were redeemed by Boaz today. Again, you and I, dead in sin, lost in the famine of unbelief, cut off from God's blessing as disobedient outsiders, are redeemed by Christ. But the payment was not with money. The exchange was not a sandal. It was the cross. It was his life for yours. Perfection given on the altar of the cross for us, sinners, filthy, wretched, rebels, undeserving, and yet he buys us anyways. This is the gospel. This is the good news. The bad news is you are and I am and we were all those things. The good news is he has redeemed you and I anyways. Why? Because God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whosoever would believe in him would not perish but have everlasting life. On the cross, you ask, why did he die? Because on the cross he bore the full wrath of God because of sin. Romans 6:23 says, for the wages of sin is death. That's the payment. That's the sandal. That's the money it costs. That's the exchange. Someone has to die. And he could only be satisfactory unto the wrath of God to satisfy the payment if he was perfect and without sin, and he was. But he didn't just die. He raised from the dead to offer you eternal life. This is redemption. He is the one who now spreads his covering over you, the greater Boaz, who provides and establishes and blesses you for salvation. You think about Christmas and the Advent season, you think about being redeemed, you think about the greatest gifts and what could be given to you. This story is not just a love story about two people who fell in love. It's about a God who perfectly orchestrated every single event in their lives, not just because he loved Ruth and loved Boaz, but because he loves you. And so the only question that you have to answer this Christmas is this: have you been redeemed? Let's pray.